My name is Melanie, and I learned young that love in my family was never divided evenly. My sister Tracy was the golden one, always admired, always handed the finest of everything. I, on the other hand, was the afterthought, remembered only for chores or to make Tracy shine brighter. I adapted to it. The hand-me-down clothes, the forgotten birthdays, the way my parents' eyes glowed for her but never for me. When Tracy graduated, they gifted her a house, a brand new place to start her future. My present? A $5 lottery ticket tossed in my direction like a punchline. But that ticket changed everything. If you've ever felt unseen in your own family, hit that subscribe button and follow my story. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, in a home that looked flawless from the outside. White siding, a neatly mowed lawn, a porch swing that creaked with the summer wind. But inside, it was obvious I didn't belong the way Tracy did. She was 4 years older. With a smile that could melt anyone, and a gift for graphic design my parents, Janet and Philip, called a blessing from heaven. They poured their money into her, private art lessons, fancy software, and design workshops in Atlanta. I got the leftovers, the hand-me-downs, the half-hearted nods when I brought home good grades. I was 7 when I first saw it clearly. That Christmas, the living room shimmered with string lights, and the tree was buried under a mountain of gifts. Tracy ripped open a huge box, squealing when she uncovered a sleek digital drawing tablet, the kind professionals used. My mother clapped, eyes gleaming, and my father lifted his camera to record every second. I sat on the couch, hugging my knees, waiting for my turn. When it came, my mother handed me a small wrinkled bag from the dollar store. Inside was a faded blue backpack with a broken zipper. "It's practical," she said without looking at me. "Tracy needs tools for her future." I forced a smile. Though my throat ached as I watched Tracy sketch on her tablet, the glow lighting her face while I shoved the backpack under the couch. Birthdays weren't any better. For Tracy's 13th, my parents rented a banquet hall, hired a DJ, and invited half the neighborhood. She got a custom sketchbook embossed with her name and a set of premium markers. The cake was 3 tiers of chocolate with edible gold flakes. My 9th birthday came a month later. I got to invite one friend, Bethany, who lived down the street, and we ate store-bought cupcakes at the kitchen table. My gift was a worn-out paperback novel, the kind you find in thrift store bins. "You like to read, don't you?" my father said flatly. I nodded, but I couldn't bring myself to read it. It sat on my shelf, a reminder that I'd always be second best. Bethany was the only one who ever seemed to notice. She was my best friend, a scrappy girl with messy braids and a laugh that made everything easier. "Your family's weird," she'd whisper, sneaking me an extra cupcake. "Why do they act like Tracy's their only kid?" I never had an answer, but her words stuck like a splinter I couldn't pull free. By high school, the divide grew wider. Tracy was the star at West Charlotte High, winning art contests and getting her designs printed in the school paper. My parents framed every certificate, hung every sketch across the living room walls. I wasn't bad at school, straight A's in English, a knack for writing stories, but my successes were invisible. When I won a short story contest and showed my mom the certificate, she barely glanced at it before saying, "That's nice, Melanie, but Tracy's portfolio is what colleges care about." I folded it and never showed them another thing. The summer before my senior year, Tracy graduated high school. My parents hosted a backyard celebration, strung up lights, catered food, and hung a banner that said Tracy's bright future. They bought her a brand new laptop, top of the line for her design major at UNC Charlotte. I helped set the tables, carried trays of food, and smiled when relatives asked about me. No one wondered about my plans, and I didn't expect them to. That night, I sat on the porch steps watching fireflies blink through the yard and promised myself I'd escape someday. My own graduation came a year later. I'd worked hard, earned a partial scholarship to a local college, but my parents didn't throw a party. No banner, no lights, no gifts. We ate takeout pizza in silence, just the 4 of us. Tracy was there, home from college, chatting about her latest project while my mother nodded and my father scrolled on his phone. I didn't expect much, but I still hoped, maybe a card, maybe a kind word. Instead, my mother slid a plain envelope across the table. "A little something," she said with a thin smile. Inside was a $5 lottery ticket, the kind you grab at gas stations. "Maybe you'll get lucky," she joked. I looked at her, then at my father, who didn't even glance up. Tracy smirked, her eyes flicking toward the ticket. I tucked it into my pocket, my chest tight, hands trembling. That ticket wasn't just a cheap gift, it was proof I'd never be enough. It was proof I'd never be enough. Tracy had her laptop, her future, her spotlight. I had a scratch-off, a shrug, and a quiet reminder to stay in my lane. But I didn't cry. Not then. I'd learned long ago that tears changed nothing. Instead, I kept that ticket. Not because I believed it would win, but because it was mine. One of the rare things they'd ever given me. Looking back, I used to think that if I worked harder, got better grades, stayed quiet, caused less trouble, maybe they'd finally see me. I'd stay up late washing dishes, folding laundry, doing anything for a scrap of attention. But it never came. My mother would say, "Tracy's got a big showcase this weekend, so we're all helping her out." My father would nod, adding, "You're the sensible one, Melanie. You don't need all that fuss." Sensible, that's what they called me, as if it were praise, but all it meant was invisible. Bethany was the only one who really understood. We'd sit on her front porch, sharing a soda, while she ranted about how unfair it was. "They treat you like a guest in your own house," she'd fume, her eyes blazing. "One day, you're going to show them." I'd laugh it off, but her words planted something deep inside me. I didn't know how, but I wanted to prove I was more than the kid they ignored. By the time I finished high school, I'd stopped hoping. I'd spent 18 years chasing love that never existed. The lottery ticket in my pocket felt heavier than it should, not because of what it was, but because of what it meant. I didn't realize then that it had already changed my life, not just my bank account, but the way I saw myself. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in that house any longer, under that roof where every corner reminded me I'd never measure up. So I packed the little I owned, some faded clothes, a cracked phone, and a notebook filled with half-written stories. I stuffed them into a duffel bag, left a note on the kitchen counter that read, "I'm moving out. Don't worry," and walked away from that life in Charlotte without looking back. I found a tiny studio apartment downtown, a cramped box with peeling paint and a window that rattled every time a truck passed. The rent devoured half my paycheck, but it was mine. No one told me to be sensible. No one compared me to Tracy. No one expected me to fade into the background. I got a job waiting tables at a diner off Tryon Street, slinging burgers and refilling coffee for tips that barely covered groceries. College was part-time, just a few classes at the community college when I could afford it. My parents didn't offer to help with tuition. Tracy's design degree was their priority, and they'd already bought her a house in the suburbs, a cute little bungalow with a picket fence. I never asked them for money. I'd learned long ago that asking got me nowhere. Life was hard, but it was real. I'd come home after double shifts, feet aching, hands smelling of grease, and collapse on a thrift store mattress. The apartment was quiet, just the hum of a cheap fan and the distant wail of sirens. For the first time, I felt light, like I'd finally dropped a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying. My family didn't call, didn't text. The group chat where I was technically still included was full of Tracy, photos of her new house, her latest project, my mother's gushing captions, "So proud of our star." I'd scroll past them, thumb hovering, then lock my phone. Bethany was the only one who checked in, dropping by with a pizza or dragging me to a late-night coffee shop. "You're better off without them," she'd insist, her voice firm. I wanted to believe her, but sometimes, in the quiet, I wondered if I'd ever stop feeling like the forgotten kid. That lottery ticket, the one my mother had tossed at me like a pity prize, stayed buried in a drawer beside my bed, hidden under loose change and unpaid bills. I never scratched it, never even looked at it. To me, it was a symbol of their indifference, not a real chance at anything. Every few weeks, I'd open the drawer, see its crumpled edge, and close it again. It wasn't about the money. I didn't believe in luck. It was about what they thought I was worth, a $5 gamble, nothing more. Months turned into a year, then two. I was 20 now, juggling diner shifts and college assignments, scraping by on instant noodles and stubborn pride. One Friday night, after a grueling 10-hour shift, I came home to a flickering light bulb and a final notice on my electric bill. I sank to the floor, exhausted, staring at that drawer. Something nudged me, not hope, but defiance. I was tired of carrying their dismissal, tired of letting that ticket define me. I reached for it, my hand steady, and sat at the wobbly kitchen table. My phone was open to the North Carolina lottery website, the numbers glowing on the screen. I scratched the silver coating, not expecting a thing, just wanting it over. The first number was 12, then 25, 38, 47, 53, 64. My breath, then 25, 38, 47, 53, 64. My breath caught, but I shook my head, convinced I'd read it wrong. I checked again, whispering each number as my heart pounded so loudly I could barely think. They matched every single one. The screen flashed, "Congratulations. You've won the jackpot. $68 million. I dropped the ticket, my hands trembling, staring like it might disappear. This couldn't be real. I'd spent my whole life being overlooked, and now this. I sat in stunned silence, the room spinning until the weight of it hit me. I'd won, not just money, but a chance to rewrite everything. I didn't sleep that night. My mind raced, questions piling up. What now? Who could I trust? My family was the last group I'd ever call. They'd never asked how I was, never cared that I'd been barely getting by. If they found out, they'd come running, hands out, pretending they'd always cared. Bethany crossed my mind, but even with her, I hesitated. This was too big, too fragile. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I'd keep it secret, at least until I figured out what to do. I opened my laptop and searched, "What to do if you win the lottery?" The first piece of advice was bold and clear. Don't tell anyone. Hire a financial advisor you trust. For days, I researched, reading reviews, checking credentials. Finally, I chose Sharon Wheeler, a financial advisor with 3 decades of experience, working out of a sleek office tower in uptown Charlotte. I was nervous booking the appointment, my palms slick with sweat, but something about her calm, no-nonsense tone felt right. The day of the meeting, I wore my best dress, a simple black one I'd bought on clearance, and showed up 20 minutes early. Sharon's office smelled of coffee and leather, soft jazz humming in the background. She greeted me with a firm handshake, her gray eyes sharp but kind. "Melanie," she said, sitting across from me, "this is a life changer. But it's not a fairy tale. Let's make it work for you." For 3 hours, we laid out a plan. I wouldn't claim the winnings under my name. An LLC would protect my identity. Sharon brought in a tax attorney and an investment specialist, a team that moved with precision like they'd done this 100 times. They explained everything: taxes, fees, logistics. After it all, I'd walk away with $42 million wired into a secure account under the LLC. I signed the papers, my hand steady but my pulse racing. A week later, the money landed. The number on the screen didn't feel real. My old life, diner tips, overdue bills, restless nights, was fading like a bad dream. I started small. Paid off my student loans, cleared my credit card debt, moved out of that cramped studio and into a modest townhouse in a quiet Charlotte neighborhood. It had hardwood floors, a little backyard, and sunlight that poured through the windows every morning. I bought a used Honda Civic. Dependable, low profile, nothing flashy. Sharon urged me to think long-term, not mansions or designer cars, but investments and stability. I enrolled in a graphic novel course, something I'd always wanted but could never afford. It felt surreal, having choices, living without counting pennies. Through it all, I stayed silent. I didn't tell Bethany. Not yet, I didn't post online. I didn't reach out to my family. The group chat stayed active, though, filled with Tracy's updates, her new design clients, her house renovations, my mother's constant praise. I'd scroll through, feeling a strange mix of calm and distance. They had no idea I'd become someone new, someone who no longer needed their approval. That lottery ticket, once a cruel symbol of neglect, had turned into a key, a quiet doorway into a life I was building for myself. I kept working at the diner for a few more weeks, not for the money, but because I wasn't quite ready to let go of the version of me that had fought for every dollar. The regulars noticed something different. "You're smiling more lately," one said, sliding his cup forward for a refill. I shrugged, but he was right. For the first time, I wasn't dragging the weight of my family's indifference behind me. A month later, I quit the diner, leaving a handwritten thank you note and a $100 tip for the cook who always saved me a slice of pie. It felt like closing a chapter, one written in grease stains and late nights. Following Sharon's guidance, I dove deeper into the art course at the local institute. I'd always loved storytelling, writing in high school, sketching characters in the margins of my notebooks. But my parents had dismissed it as a waste of time. Not like Tracy's real talent. Now I finally had the freedom to explore. The classes were small, full of people who spoke passionately about panels and inking like it was an art form. And it was. I'd sit in the back, sketching quietly, losing myself in worlds I created. For the first time, I felt like I was building something just for me, not to prove my worth to anyone else. I stayed off social media and kept my life private. The townhouse was registered under the LLC, my car was modest, and nothing about me screamed millionaire. Not even Bethany knew. She had been my anchor through every storm. But this secret felt too delicate, too powerful. It could shift everything, even our friendship. Still, we met for coffee, crashed at her place for movie nights, laughed like old times. "You seem different," she said one evening, sprawled on her couch with popcorn. "Like you're not so stressed anymore." I laughed it off, blaming it on slow nights at the diner, but her words made me uneasy. I wasn't ready for questions, not yet. My family, though, was another matter. The group chat where I lingered like a ghost kept buzzing. Photos of Tracy's renovated bungalow, her latest design contract, my mother's gushing captions. Tracy's photos filled the group chat again. Her newly renovated bungalow, her latest design project, all followed by Mom's proud captions. "Tracy's killing it," she'd write, like a cheerleader for only one child. I'd scroll through their messages, feel that familiar ache in my chest, then lock my phone. They still didn't call. Didn't ask how I was. Once I texted a simple, "Hey, how's everyone?" No one replied. Not even an emoji. It hurt, but it wasn't a surprise. I'd stopped expecting love from that direction a long time ago. Sharon, though, she became more than just a financial advisor. She turned into a mentor, someone who looked at me and saw more than a lucky break. We'd meet once a month, reviewing investments, stocks, bonds, even a small stake in a local startup. "You're not just rich," she'd remind me, voice steady and sure. "You're building a legacy." For the first time, I started to believe her. I treated myself to a few small things: a leather journal, a good laptop for my graphic novel work. I planted lavender in my backyard, a quiet nod to the dreams I'd buried as a kid. Every morning, I'd sit on that porch with my coffee, watch the sun rise over the street, and feel a peace I'd never known in my parents' house. But secrets like mine never stay buried for long. It started with Bethany, of all people. She dropped by one Saturday, eyes wide the moment she stepped into my townhouse. "Mel, this place is beautiful," she said, running a hand along the kitchen counter. "How are you affording this on a diner paycheck?" I mumbled something about savings and a side gig. She didn't push, and I thought that was the end of it. A week later, she was out at a bar with some coworkers, chatting, laughing, and my name came up. Nothing spiteful, just proud talk. "Melanie's got this gorgeous new place," Bethany said, according to someone who overheard. "She's doing better than all of us." That friend told another, and before long, whispers drifted through Charlotte's small world circles like wildfire. I didn't catch on right away. I was too wrapped up in my graphic novel course, sketching a story about a girl who climbs her way out of nothing. But then my phone started buzzing. A text from an old high school classmate. "Heard you're living large now, Mel. What's the story?" I ignored it, my stomach tightening. Then came an email from a distant cousin, asking if I'd come into some money. I deleted it instantly, but the unease didn't fade. The breaking point came through the family group chat. The first real message in months that wasn't about Tracy. It was from my mother. "Melanie, we heard you moved into a nice place. Why didn't you tell us?" No warmth. Just that sharp edge of curiosity, like she was sniffing out a lead. I stared at the screen, my coffee going cold beside me. An hour later, Tracy chimed in, her message flashing up with that fake playful tone. "Yeah, Mel, what's up? Spill the tea." Dad didn't say a word. He never did. But somehow his silence felt heavier than ever. I didn't reply. I couldn't. The thought of them knowing or even guessing made my skin crawl. For years, they'd brushed me off, left me to scrape by while Tracy got it all. Now, because of a rumor, they were circling like vultures. I locked my phone, my hands trembling, and called Sharon. "Rumors travel fast," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You need to tighten things up." She advised me to re-register my assets under a fresh LLC, switch my mailing address to a P.O. box, and stay far from anything that drew attention. I followed every step, but the damage was already done. 2 days later, my mother called. I let it ring to voicemail. Her voice poured through the speaker, thick and sugary. "Sweetheart, I just want to catch up. It's been so long." I didn't call back. Next came Tracy, texting like we were old friends. "Hey, heard you're doing great. Want to grab lunch?" I left her on red. Bethany came by that weekend, eyes red with guilt. "I didn't mean to start anything," she said, her face flushed. "I was just proud of you." I hugged her and told her it wasn't her fault, but inside, I was spiraling. The life I'd built, quiet, mine, was slipping through my fingers. My family's sudden warmth wasn't love. It was hunger. The same kind I'd seen when they fawned over Tracy's every success. Like her wins somehow belonged to them. Now they saw me not as a daughter or a sister, but as a ticket. That night I sat in my townhouse, lavender drifting in from the backyard. I opened my laptop and stared at the graphic novel on my screen. The main character, a girl with no name, was taking shape. Strong, untouchable, free. I wanted to be her. But my family's messages buzzed in my mind like flies I couldn't swat away. I didn't know what they'd try next, but one thing was certain. I wasn't the Melanie they'd ignored anymore. Whatever they wanted, they'd have to face the woman I'd become. A week later, my mother called again. Her voice on voicemail sounded bright, almost rehearsed. "We're having dinner this Sunday, Melanie. Just the family. We'd love to see you." I stared at the phone, thumb hovering over delete. Part of me wanted to protect the peace I'd built in my quiet Charlotte townhouse. But another part, the one that remembered every forgotten birthday, every thoughtless gift, wanted answers. Why now? What did they really want? So I texted back, short and simple, "I'll be there." I wasn't sure why I agreed. Maybe curiosity, maybe closure. I needed to see for myself whether they'd changed, or if I'd just been fooling myself all along. Sunday evening, I drove to the old house, the white siding, the creaky porch swing swaying like it always had. It looked the same, yet smaller, like a memory I'd outgrown. I wore a plain sweater and jeans. Nothing showy. My used Honda Civic parked out front. Mom opened the door, her smile wide but brittle, pulling me into a hug that lasted just a little too long. "You look good," she said, eyes scanning me like she was searching for clues. Dad gave a curt nod from behind his newspaper, half his face hidden. Tracy was already at the table, hair pulled back, smile perfectly practiced. "Hey, Mel," she said casually, like we'd seen each other just yesterday. Dinner felt like theater. Mom served roasted chicken and mashed potatoes, her special occasion meal. But the air was heavy with unspoken motives. Tracy carried the conversation, boasting about her design work, her next big plans. Mom nodded along, her eyes glowing with pride. Dad grunted in rhythm as if on cue. I stayed quiet, pushing food around my plate, counting the minutes until it ended. No one asked about my life. Not my job. Not my classes. Nothing. I wasn't a daughter at that table, just a placeholder. When dessert arrived, a store-bought pie unevenly sliced, Mom cleared her throat. Her fork tapped against her plate. "Melanie," she began, her tone syrupy sweet, "we've been talking as a family." I set my glass down, my pulse quickening. Here it was, the reason they'd pulled me back. "Tracy's got a big opportunity," Mom began, glancing at my sister. "She's planning to open her own graphic design studio, a real business. It's her dream come true, but it's expensive. Around $500,000 to get it started." I stayed quiet, my eyes shifting to Tracy. She leaned forward, her smile stretched tight. "It's a sure thing, Mel," she said. "I've got clients ready to sign, but the startup costs are brutal. We thought since you're doing so well." She let the words fade, but the meaning sat thick in the air. Dad finally looked up, his gaze steady, like he'd already made up his mind for me. Mom's tone turned coaxing. "You got that nice place now, Melanie. We figured you could help just a little. Family helps family, right?" I leaned back, my hands calm, though my chest was tight. For a moment, I was 7 again, clutching a worn backpack while Tracy unwrapped a brand-new drawing tablet. I was 9, eating cupcakes alone while her birthday party echoed through the house. I was 18, holding a $5 lottery ticket while they handed Tracy house keys. The memories came flooding back, sharp, bitter, and vivid. But this time, I wasn't that quiet girl anymore. I looked at them, Mom's hopeful smile, Tracy's polished charm, Dad's wordless pressure, and something shifted inside me. Not anger, clarity. "Family," I said, my voice steady, repeating the word like I was testing it. Where was family when I was pulling double shifts to afford school? When I lived off instant noodles because no one offered to help? Mom's smile trembled, but I didn't stop. "Where were you when I won that lottery ticket, the one you laughed off as luck? You gave Tracy a house, a future, everything. Me? You told me to be practical." The room went still, the kind of silence that presses against your skin. Tracy shifted, her tone sharp. "That's not fair," she snapped. "We all had hard times. You don't get to rewrite the past just because you're finally doing fine." Dad nodded, his jaw set, but Mom reached across the table, her hand hovering over mine. "Melanie, we did our best," she said softly, her voice breaking. "We're asking for help now because we're family. Don't turn your back on us." I drew my hand away, my stare unwavering. "I'm not turning my back," I said quietly. "I'm just done pretending we're something we're not. You didn't see me then, and you don't see me now." "You see money?" I turned to Tracy, my voice calm. "You want a studio? Earn it, like I did. No one's stopping you." I stood, grabbed my purse, my heart pounding, but my steps sure. "I used to crave your approval," I said, pausing by the door. "I used to think if I worked hard enough, you'd love me. But I don't need that anymore." Mom gasped, her hand flying to her chest. Tracy just stared, her face frozen between shock and fury. Dad looked away, the newspaper on his lap slipping forgotten. The floorboards creaked under my feet as I reached the door. Before leaving, I turned back one last time, my tone softer but firm. "I'm helping someone who actually saw me," I said. "Bethany's opening a print shop, and I'm investing in her. That's what real family does. They show up when it counts." I stepped outside, the cool night air brushing my face. The porch swing swayed faintly behind me, a ghost from another life, but I didn't look back. I climbed into my car, the hum of the engine steady as I drove away from a house that had never been home. My hands gripped the wheel, not from anger, but release. I'd finally spoken what I'd carried for years, shedding a version of myself that no longer fit. They wanted $500,000, but what they got was a truth they could never unhear. On the road back to my townhouse, I thought of Bethany, how she'd shown up when no one else did, bringing pizza when I was broke, listening when I felt invisible. She didn't know about the lottery yet, but I'd tell her soon. Not just because I trusted her, but because she'd earned it. I'd help her open that print shop, not to prove anything to my family, but because it was right. They'd once called me sensible, but they never understood what I'd built. A life where I decided who mattered and where I belonged. I wasn't shaped by their neglect anymore. When I got home, I sank into my couch, the lavender scent from the backyard drifting through the open window. My phone buzzed, another text from my mother. "Melanie, how could you say those things?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. For the first time, I wasn't running from their expectations or chasing their approval. I was free, not because of the 68 million, but because I finally saw my own worth. And that was something they could never take away. I told Bethany about the lottery the next week, sitting in her tiny apartment over takeout tacos. Her eyes went wide, fork frozen midair. $68 million. She gasped, then laughed, pulling me into a hug. "Mel, you're insane for keeping that secret." I explained everything. The ticket, Sharon, the LLC, my plan to help her open the shop. Bethany had been there when I had nothing, sharing her last dollar for coffee when I couldn't afford it. Now I could give her the chance she never had. "You don't have to," she said softly, but I shook my head. "Your family," I told her, and I meant every word. We spent hours sketching ideas for her shop, a small downtown space where she'd print art for local creators. By spring, I'd quietly funded it, $200,000, no strings attached. Watching her sign the lease, her hands trembling with excitement, felt better than any win I'd ever imagined. My life started to take shape, too. My graphic novel course became a passion I hadn't expected. I poured myself into a story about a girl who rebuilt a world from ashes, her strength drawn from scars no one else saw. My instructor noticed the potential and connected me with a small press in Raleigh. 6 months later, my first graphic novel hit local bookstores. Its cover, a girl under a burning sky staring back at me from behind glass. I didn't tell my family. Their approval, once the only thing I wanted, didn't matter anymore. I was writing for myself, and for the readers who'd find themselves in my pages, not for the house that never saw me. Sharon helped me keep my wealth grounded. We met often, not just about investments, real estate, or a few tech startups, but about balance, about not letting money define me. "You're not the lottery, Melanie," she'd remind me, her gray eyes steady. "You're the choices you make." I took her words to heart. I kept my life simple. My townhouse, my Honda Civic, and a few quiet trips to Asheville's mountains or Wilmington's beaches. I started painting again, 2 small canvases of landscapes I'd seen on my travels, hanging them on my walls beside the lavender I'd planted. Each piece reminded me I was building a life, not running from one. My family didn't vanish, though I sometimes wished they had. My mother's texts kept coming, softer now, threaded with guilt. "We miss you, Melanie. Let's talk." Tracy's messages were rare, less demanding, almost careful. "Saw your book in a store. Didn't know you did that." I didn't reply, but I didn't block them either. I wanted to see how far they'd go, how long before they realized I wasn't coming back to their version of me. My father sent one email, short and stiff. "Your mother's upset, call her." I archived it without a word. Then, a month after that dinner, a letter arrived, handwritten in my mother's careful script. "We made mistakes. I see that now. You're still our daughter." I folded it and tucked it into a drawer with old receipts. It wasn't an apology I trusted, not after years of being invisible. Tracy surprised me most. Through a mutual friend, I heard she'd started freelancing again, taking smaller clients to fund her own studio. She never asked for money, never mentioned the $500,000 again. Part of me wondered if my words that night had reached her, if she was finally stepping out of the shadow they'd built for her. I didn't reach out. I wasn't ready to forgive. Not while the old wound still ached. Faint but real, I kept my distance, only seeing them on holidays. Thanksgiving, Christmas, where I'd show up for an hour, exchange polite words, and leave before the old patterns returned. I'd smile at my mother's careful hugs, nod at my father's gruff greetings, and trade small talk with Tracy about her projects. But I never stayed long. My real life was elsewhere, in the pages I drew, the mornings I spent sipping coffee on my porch, and the evenings laughing with Bethany at her new shop. She'd named it Ink Haven, a tribute to the art we both loved. Watching her hang the sign, pride glowing on her face, filled me with a warmth I'd never known in that old Charlotte house. One crisp fall morning, I drove to a comic convention in Durham, where my graphic novel was featured in the indie artist section. The hall buzzed with voices and energy. I stood at my booth, stacks of books neatly arranged, watching strangers flip through the pages. A teenage girl, maybe 16, lingered longer than most. "This story," she said, clutching a copy. "It's like you understand what it's like to feel unseen." I smiled, my chest tightening with quiet joy. "I do," I said simply, signing her book. No applause, no photos, just her words, real, raw, and worth more than any praise my family could ever give. After the convention, I stopped by a cafe nearby, my leather journal open on the table. I sketched a new character, a woman who'd learned to stand tall without anyone else's light. My phone sat silent. No texts from my mother or Tracy, and that silence didn't hurt anymore. I'd spent years chasing their love, believing I was less because they gave me less. But now, with $68 million and a life I'd built from scratch, I knew the truth. My worth was never theirs to define. It lived in the stories I told, the people I lifted, the peace I found. My family had handed me a $5 lottery ticket thinking it was nothing. But that ticket, and everything that came after, revealed who I truly was. A woman who didn't need their validation to shine. Tracy might keep designing. My mother might keep writing letters. My father might stay silent. But I was done waiting for them to see me. I saw myself, and that was enough. Months later, I took a quiet trip to Savannah, staying in a small inn by the river. I walked cobblestone streets, watched fireflies shimmer at dusk, and filled my journal with new stories. My life wasn't loud or lavish, but it was full of mornings painting, afternoons helping Bethany at her shop, and nights dreaming up worlds no one could take away. I'd learned to set boundaries, to choose who earned a place beside me. My family was part of my past, but they no longer defined my future. I'd taught them a lesson, not through anger or revenge, but through the life I lived. A life I built with my own hands.